Okay, so this is basically a quick review and some installation tips. I won't call it a full tutorial, but it should answer a lot of your questions. So first of all, the gimbal works as advertised. You can see here, you pitch and roll, and the GoPro stays steady. You can take great footage with it. Then of course on the back here, the little pitch control lever, you move it one way and the gimbal pitches one way and move it the other way and it pitches the other way, and that works just as advertised. As far as attaching the gimbal to the Phantom itself, it's pretty self-explanatory. You just screw one plate into it just like the old GoPro mount, then you connect with these little rubber connectors. You connect the bottom plate to it, and you're done as far as mounting it. Next step is you run the auxiliary power cable. You open up the top of the Phantom. There's going to be an auxiliary power cable right in this corner. You wire it to the JST connector cable, which comes with the gimbal. And then you run it through this little hole here and connect the power to the gimbal. Once you do that, the gimbal works as far as stabilization. It'll stabilize your pitch and roll and everything, but it'll only face straight out. You can't angle it until you get the pitch control set up. And so how do you get set up the pitch control? Well, on the board here, and I'm going to try to zoom in with this video. I know the quality is great, and I apologize in advance if it's shaky. Okay, on this little board here, there's a row of 8 little pins, okay? So the first thing you do is you take a cable, and again, the gimbal comes with a bunch of different colored cables. It doesn't matter which one you use. You take a cable, in this case I use the red one, you connect it to the very top left pin, okay? The top left pin on that row. That's your pitch control, okay? You take that cable, you run it up through the little hole where your JST connector went through up here. And then what you do is you connect it to the bottom left connector on the Phantom's NASM board. That's the F2 port. Top left down here goes to bottom left up here, F2 port. That's pitch. Next, you want to connect the ground. The ground is this other cable I've got here. The ground is the bottom left on this row of pins. So connect the second cable to the bottom left, and it runs up, and then it connects to the top left on the F2 port, a little negative. So again, top left here goes to bottom left, F2 port. Bottom left here goes to top left on the F2 port. And then you're done as far as wiring and connections. And now I'll just go into a little bit on what you need to do on the NASM Assistant to get it working. Real quick, before we get into the NASM, one thing I meant to say earlier is the GoPro camera has to be installed on the gimbal for it to work. Okay, it's made for the GoPro and it needs it to balance itself. If the GoPro's not on it, it's just going to keep moving around and wobbling. And that's something I found out. Okay, but now let's go into the NASM. All right, you got the cables installed, you got everything ready. You hook your Phantom up to your PC, you turn the transmitter on. The first thing you do is you go to this advanced tab, okay? And then gimbal, and then this will be on off. You'll turn the gimbal switch on. Okay. Anyways, I don't know why this little pop-up comes up. Just ignore it. Then these things will be populated with defaults. If they're not, hit the default button. Okay, so this will be 1000, negative 1000. This will be 1000, negative 1000. Ignore these two, and this will be 100. Now it'll work, but I changed the values to tweak it for this gimbal, and I'll tell you why. First of all, the pitch. The roll doesn't really matter. I changed it anyway, but the pitch is this is your maximum and your minimum. Okay, this controls how far the gimbal can pitch. Okay. The default value of 1000 is like 3 loops. Okay, you know, in other words, if you hit maximum, the thing would just spin in circles. And the gimbal, this gimbal can't spin that far. It'll just go to its limit, and then it'll just sit there shuddering, trying to go further, and it can't. So I set this to 80 and this to minus 350. That's basically as far as the gimbal can move, and so I don't want it to try to move any further. So I just set these limits, which control on that. So 80 here and minus 350. And one thing I learned also is you can type a value in here, 70 or whatever, and you go to the next thing and it stays there. You go to this tab, you come back, it's back at 80. Okay, you have to, when you enter a value in this, you have to hit enter, 80, enter, and then it'll turn blue and you know the value is then saved. Okay, next thing is the pitch control. Okay, this is a value of 1 to 100 pitch control speed. At 100, it moves too fast. In other words, the sensitivity is too high. You barely touch that little lever and it flips all the way up or all the way down. So you can play around with it. I found 30 is about the best value. It's sensitive enough to where you don't have to wiggle the thing around, but it doesn't move too fast to where you can still make small adjustments. The last thing you'll do, okay, once you got all these values saved, you're good to go. Just go to Basic and RC, and then you're going to calibrate the X1. That's the little lever on the back of the controller. You hit Start Calibration. Then you move the little lever on the transmitter forward and back a couple times, and it'll set the calibration. Then you'll say Done Calibrating, and you're good to go.